Hey there guys, and welcome back. On this week's show, it's part 3 of our ships in a bottle build. When we finished last week's show, we had just finished all of the rigging on both the ships, both the double mast and the 3-mast ship. And I'm quite pleased with the way they turned out. But now it's time to add the cabins. And I want you to keep in mind that you don't necessarily have to use wood for all of the pieces on that. And that's what we're going to get into next. So let's head over to the bench and I'll show you what I have in mind for these cabins. Well, for our cabins, I've cut some little tiny pieces of maple. They're 1/8 of an inch thick, and I think they measure 3/16 by 1/2 inch. So all I'm going to do is take some of this white glue and apply it to one side, and we're going to place a roof on this. And it doesn't have to be anything fancy, but to keep it kind of proportionate, I'm just using black cardstock that I've cut. So we're just going to line up each little piece. I know this is tiny, probably hard to see on the video, especially with my fingers in the way. But there's the first one lined up. And we can just let that set up. And when you're done, you should have something that looks like this. And then you can glue it to the deck. You just want to remember that whatever size cabin you place on there, you need to have it so that the masts will still fold. So if you go higher than the dimension of the point of connection of your pin that makes the masts hinge, if you go taller than that, your masts will not fold down. You could cause yourself some problems. So just keep that in mind when adding cabins to your deck. Well, it's now time to add the sails, and what I have done is cut out some white paper. I know in our original build I dyed it with coffee. I don't want to do that this time. So I just have some paper. It's a thin paper to make it proportionate to the model. And the top flat section is just a little bit shorter than what our spars are wide. And then I've just slightly angled it down and then curved it at the bottom. Well, what I want to do now is we need to try to give the bottom a little bit of shape. So I'm going to use a little bit of white glue. Just going to put a little bit on my finger here, and we will coat the bottom corners of our sail, and we're going to kind of curl it. Try to give it some shape. Now, it doesn't have to be perfectly curled or anything like that. You just kind of want to give it something other than being flat. But you also want to keep in mind not to curl the top, because that is going to have to fit flat on the mast. Okay, so you can see there we have a little bit of a curl, not much. And we'll put this aside and let this dry. We'll do this to all of our sails. You're going to need one for each of the square rigging spars on both of your ships. Now, once those sails are dry, mine are not completely dry, but I'm going to put them on anyway. You just want to put a little bit of glue across the front end of your spar here. Just like that. And then we will take our sail, and with your curves going to the rear of the ship, we'll just take our sail and glue it right there, right onto our spar. And you'll let that dry. Now, if you're not happy with the curls of it, you can curl it again once it's dried to the spar, so that it has a little bit of support. I will admit it's a little tough to try to curl those while they have nothing to support them. So there we go. There is one added on there. I will add all the rest, and I'll see you when we get that done. I don't think we need a a video of me applying 10 million sails to a ship. So let's get that done, and then I'll see you after that. All right, well, we're still waiting on those to dry. We haven't done the final shaping yet, but I have cut a sail that will fit onto the back, those vertical spars that we have at the rear of the ship. We're just going to glue the bottom on, just like this. I've only cut it, I've just held up a piece of paper in there to get my pattern or my dimensions, and then kind of traced it out against the spars. So we're just going to glue one in for now and let that dry. And once that's all said and done and dry, we can glue the other one in. But for now, we'll just let that one sit there and dry up. Then we'll glue the top one in and carry on. So we now need to add the sails to these front rigging lines. And they're pretty much the same as most of the others with a little bit of a twist. So for the sails on the front lines, we have a triangle that we've cut, and on the top is a fold. You can see there how it unfolds, and we're just going to place some glue inside. Be careful not to let it get up to the fold, and we're going to place it over top of each one of our lines, glue it together, and we can shape it at that point too. Give it a little bit of a curl, and then you want to make sure that it still slides on this line, because those lines, of course, as the masts fold down, are going to pull up through the bowsprit. So this needs to be able to slide for now. So let's get those glued on, and I'll show you what I mean here. So just apply a little bit of glue. You don't need a lot. We're going to spread it around so we get a nice thin coat. You can see that sail is already wanting to curl, and then we'll just place it on our lines. Just like this. And then pinch it together gently. And as I said, you can give it a little bit of a curl there, just like that. All right, and we'll let that dry up, and we'll glue the other two on the front as well. Once everything is dry, we'll do the final shaping on our sails, and I'll show you what I've got. And at this point, our ships are pretty much done. I'm happy with the way they came out. They look great. I would have liked a little more detail on the ships, but these ones here are quite small. I think the details, no matter what I added, wouldn't look quite right. So I'm going to leave it like this. I'm going to keep it simple with just the cabin and the sails, and I'm happy with that, so we can move on. The next thing we need to do is we need to pour some resin in the bottle to be able to make our ocean or our water. So it's now time to pour the resin into our bottle, and what I've done is I've made a makeshift stand for our bottle that will hold it level. I have a little bubble level down here in the bottom that's letting me keep an eye on it to make sure I don't knock it out of level, so that we get everything square in there. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to mix 2 cups of resin with a very specific amount of blue oil paint to tainted blue or painted blue, and I'm going to use a funnel and a tube to pour it into our bottle. Okay, and in order to pour it in, we're going to use a funnel. We don't want to just try to pour it in the bottle. I think we'll have way too big of a mess. So use a funnel with a tube and slowly pour in your resin. Now, the reason I put in specific measurements of oil paint was in case I didn't have enough resin to fill it to the level that I want, and I don't have enough resin in there. So I'm going to be able to mix something that is similar or very close to the same color. So I'm going to finish filling this to the level that I need, and then we can move on from there. Well, it's the next day and the resin is dry, and what I want to do now, in my original tutorial, the ship was on the sea, and we did waves using clear and white silicone, etc., to get everything to look right. But I don't want that on this one. I want this one to kind of be calm, like it's pulling into the harbor, but it can't be too calm because the ships, even if going slowly, are going to cause a wake. So what I want to do is I want to use some Mod Podge, and I'm going to get inside. I'm going to hold my ships up so that I roughly know where they're going to be positioned. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to paint kind of a wavy pattern where the ships will be positioned kind of like this. And I'm going to try to get a substantial amount there, just so that it looks like there is a wake, like the boat is pushing the water aside. I don't want it to be completely flat because then it wouldn't look quite right. So I'm going to get that painted in here, and then we just have to sit and let it dry. A lot of waiting in this project. I have my boat situated roughly where I'm going to want it in that bottle. And I'm just going to use a long brush here. This is actually an oil painting brush. And I'm just going to get right to the back here carefully and position it where I want it. And it doesn't have to be perfect because the boat is going to be there as well. So you can see roughly where the boat is going to be. And we'll just paint the wake waves just like I've just done, just to give the illusion of movement there. All right, so I'm going to continue this, and I'll see you when it's done. All right, and for now, all we can do is let this dry. Now, when it dries, it's going to dry clear. So it will give us the still the color of the water, but there won't be this white. It'll just have more texture. So we have to let that dry, and I'll see you when that's done. Well, it's the next day, and all of the Mod Podge is dried in here. I know it's not going to show up on camera, but I can tell you there's some nice texture there on the water in the wake of where the two ships are going to go. So I'm just going to take some of this Deco Art acrylic paint. It's just white, and what I want to do is reach in there and very sparingly, I don't want to go too crazy on it, but I'm going to use some white paint to highlight the texture on the water. You want to try to go light on the paint. Less is more here. You can always put more on. It'll be very difficult to remove it afterwards. So we're just going to carefully dab this on here. As I said, you don't need a lot. All right, so I'm going to go through and continue adding white to all of our texture to mark the wake of our ships, and I'll see you when I get that finished. Well, we're getting there, and what you want to remember if you're going to do this and this technique is that up here at the front of the V, I guess you'll call it, or the point of the V, the paint here, or the white, which would be the water being stirred up, is a lot brighter and whiter than what it would be back here, where it is had time to settle a little bit. And in the middle, it kind of has a lot more blue to it. So you want to sort of pay attention to that while you're painting. And I'm not even really painting here. All I'm doing is getting a little bit of paint on my brush, and I'm placing it there, and I'm kind of rolling the brush around to kind of mix it and spread it through. Just rolling it from side to side to get the paint where I want it. And that's giving me that kind of blotchy effect that I'm looking for. Okay, so you get the idea. All right, and with that now, there is not much to do with this except to wait for that paint to dry. And once that paint is dry, we're going to need some white silicone. Well, I've separated our 3-mast ship here from its working tee, and we just need to carefully now fold down these masts to the rear of the ship. Just be gentle with it. You don't want to break anything. And once we get this all flattened and laid out, then we can insert it into the bottle. But before we do that, I have some silicone laid out here, some white silicone. And what I'm going to do for this is right in our boat's wake that we did with the Mod Podge and the acrylic paint, I'm going to place some silicone in the front end of it using one of our homemade little spoons that we made with our first tutorial at a coat hanger. We're just going to place the white silicone at the front end of our wake. We don't want it to go too close to the rear of the ship. It's okay if it oozes out at the sides and at the front or the bow, but we don't want to get any at the back. So let me get all this prepared and then I'll show you how we slip this into the bottle. So first things first, we'll get our silicone in the neck of the bottle. Okay, and I think that there should be pretty good. All right, so now we need to get the ship in. So we're just going to sort of squish things down and maneuver it into the neck of the bottle. You just want to be careful. Just put each one of these, the square rigging of the spars is going to have to go in on an angle. So just make sure that as you're guiding your ship into the neck of your bottle, that you're angling those spars. We don't want anything to catch. If it catches, it could break it. There we go. There's the first one in the bottle. You also want to make sure that all of these threads stay to the outside. So I'm just going to hold this carefully. Now I need to maneuver this now into place, and for that I need to get a pair of tweezers. And now with a long pair of tweezers, we will grab a hold of this by the bowsprit. I'm actually going to put it over here first, out of the way, and we are going to maneuver this in place and hopefully sink it right into that blob of silicone. All right, I like where that is right there. That looks great. And we can reach in here with some of our other tools that we made, again from the first tutorial. And we can use this to manipulate our boat and kind of squish it down so that it glues in place. Just like that. All right, that looks fantastic. And now we just want to leave it. You don't want to do anything. That silicone has to set up 100%. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take these threads, peel them off on the back here, tape them to the bottle, and I don't think we need another video of it, but I'm going to do the exact same process here with the double mast ship and sink that into some silicone here in the front end of our bottle. So let me get that done and then I'll show you what we ended up with. All right, and with both of those in the bottle, I can take a step back and breathe for a bit. That's always a nerve-wracking experience for me, squeezing these things into the bottle. You never know what's going to happen. I actually dropped the smaller of the two ships as I was putting it in, and I almost had it land sails down into the silicone, but luckily I was able to fix that up. No big deal. Now we just wait for this to dry, and then we get to do the real fun stuff. And by fun, I mean tedious. And unfortunately, that's all the time that we have for this week. We have made some spectacular progress on this. It's nice to actually have the ships inside the bottle. That's always kind of like the peak of the mountain there that you've reached when you finally get them in and everything goes fairly well. Either way, they're in there now. There's nothing that we can do other than wait for that silicone to dry to solidify those ships to our resin ocean or resin water. That's all we can do. We're going to carry on with this next week, guys. If you haven't already, please consider liking and subscribing to the channel. We have a lot of fun here every Tuesday and Friday, and I hope you're going to consider becoming a part of that. Guys, I hope that you enjoyed today's content. We are going to hopefully wrap this up next week with the finale of this ships in a bottle build. And I honestly hope that you're going to both try this for yourself, and really, I hope you're going to join me next week when I bring you yet another Alternative Tuesdays.